What's up, everybody? My name is Lance. I am the host of the Health and Real Estate Podcast. And today's guest is Alexia Rodriguez, aka Lexie. And she is the CEO of KW Cares, which we are going to do a deep dive into everything KW Cares. But before she got to KW Cares, she was, I believe, a mental health coach, was a lawyer, got in the nonprofit space, and eventually ended up at KW Cares. So I'm just going to hand it off to you if you kind of want to tell us all your fun little backstories, how you got to KW Cares, and then we could dive in from there.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me, Lance. And yeah, sure. I'll give you a little bit of information about my story and how I came to KW Cares and the KW family. I started out at college at Texas A&M, so I'm a proud Aggie. Although we lost to the Longhorns Thanksgiving week, which was super sad. I have a lot of confidence our football team is going to do amazing in the playoffs. So we'll see. Anywho, after college, I went to graduate school. I got a master's in counseling psychology, became a mental health therapist, worked in the nonprofit space. I was actually working as a counselor for inmates in a jail in New Jersey. That jail was attached to a courthouse. And so I was exposed to the legal system, every day when I went to work, decided I wanted to go to law school, went ahead and did that. Came back to Texas, where I'm originally from, and worked for the Attorney General's office for 5 years, practicing law. And then the calling to get back into the nonprofit space was just very loud and clear for me. It's just always been a passion. I enjoyed being a trial lawyer, and I think that experience helped me in my overall career in a number of different ways. But my biggest passion has always been serving in the nonprofit arena. So went back to the nonprofit arena and landed at a nonprofit called Southwest Key Programs. I was a vice president of Immigrant Children's Services. So what we did was run shelters for kids that came to the United States without their parents. When I took over the job running that contract, we were the largest government contractor with the Department of Health and Human Services, which is the social service side of the federal government, not the law enforcement side. So we didn't run detention centers, we ran children's shelters. When I took over, we had about 500 beds. And when I left 15 years later, we had 7,000 beds across 3 states. We were serving 6,000 kids a day. I had a staff of about 7,000 folks that reported up to me in a budget of $500 million. So did that for about 15 years. And at one point, I felt my kids were becoming unaccompanied minors. I spent so much time on the road. I was on the road 2 to 3 weeks a month for 15 years. It got to a point where I said, I want to do something different, but I don't know what I want to do. So I took a sabbatical for about a year and then a year and a half, and then was ready to get back in. And I looked at Indeed, and the very first job that I saw in the nonprofit space in Austin was this company called KW Cares, this nonprofit called KW Cares. I'm like, what is that? I knew of Keller Williams because it's actually right down the road from where I live, and who doesn't know about KW? But I had no idea that KW Cares was part of the Keller Williams ecosystem. So when I looked into it, I said, wow, this is just an amazing initiative that Keller Williams as a company is committed to. I'd love to be part of what's going on here. So I threw my hat in the ring. I've never been a real estate agent. I really don't know anything about real estate other than I bought a couple of houses myself. And I didn't know what was going to happen. It's the only job I applied for out of my sabbatical. And I wound up getting the job. And I'm just super grateful to be in this role. I will have my 5-year anniversary in February of 2026. And I hope it's the last job I ever have, because honestly, I say this every day. I have the best job within the Keller Williams ecosystem. I get up every single day, my team and I, and serve a mission where we know we're not just like changing people's life, Lance. A lot of times we're helping to save people's lives, right?
Yeah.
Like the grants that we give are just making such an amazing impact on these folks' lives. And that's what we do every day. So
That's beautiful. I love it. I didn't know you just founded your very first job post or very first job on Indeed. That's
yeah,
really KW
yeah.
Cares. And you didn't know that that was affiliated with Keller Williams at the time. So that was cool.
Right. Yeah. It all worked out so perfectly. And again, I just feel just super blessed that I get to serve in this role every day.
Absolutely. And yeah, you don't have any real estate experience, but that's not, what you're hired for. You have nonprofit experience, 15 plus years. So
That's right.
that is the perfect fit. So,
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I've learned a lot about real estate in the last 5 years that I've been here, that's for sure. The more I know about real estate, the better we can serve our
Mhm.
agents, but at first that you're absolutely correct. I had no idea about how real estate works and any of the insides to Keller Williams in particular as a company, but I've definitely have been mentored by some of the brightest and the best, including Mo Anderson, who founded KW Cares. She's the chair of my board, so she's my big boss. And I've just been really fortunate to have worked with some of the most successful KW agents over the last 5 years as they've served on my board and been so generous with their time and mentorship with me.
Awesome. Perfect. So, yeah, what exactly is KW Cares? And then when did it start?
Sure, I can tell you about that. So we've been around for 22 years and we were founded by Mo Anderson originally, and we're a 501(c)(3), right? So we are a nonprofit. We have our nonprofit status. We are a separate legal business entity from Keller Williams, but we exist to serve KW agents and associates during times of financial need due to an emergency situation, such as someone getting cancer, or maybe they're a victim of a natural disaster, that kind of thing, right? Originally, we got started as a grassroots effort at the Southwest Market Center, so right next door to KWRI headquarters. It's the first market center for Keller Williams. It's market center number one. And at the time, Mo Anderson was the CEO of KWRI, and she heard about what was going on next door and said, "This sounds like such an incredible initiative. We cannot keep it at the Southwest Market Center. We need to take this nationwide,"
Yeah.
right? So she's the one that undertook the process of getting our nonprofit status with the IRS. That happened 22 years ago, and we've just been rocking and rolling ever since.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys have really been rocking and rolling ever since. I know you all have been able to give back like millions, right, to agent
Yes.
associates. Like, what are some of the numbers?
Yeah, so we have given over $67 million in those 22 years and affected over 7,200 families. So pretty impressive stats. I do want to mention too that one of the most beautiful things about KW Cares is that we are entirely funded. Every single penny comes from an agent or an associate. So our tagline is family helping family. So we receive funds from an agent either through transactional giving. When they close on a transaction, they can elect to give us a portion of their commission through command, or through a one-time donation on our website, or by participating in the two fundraisers KW Cares does each year. But what's so incredibly beautiful is that nobody else supports this. This is just supported by agents for agents. And I just, it just like makes my heart sing every day when when I give you those stats, like all that money that came from agents, right? It didn't come from the government. It didn't come from some wealthy philanthropist out in LA or New York. This is all being given in $10, $20 increments that when you put it all together and you multiply that all together, you come up with this just incredible impact. And I just think that's just a testament to the strong and beautiful culture we have at Keller Williams.
Definitely, like you said, it's coming from agents, just average,
Yes.
ordinary agents
Yep.
donating maybe one-time donations, or they donate a percentage or a certain portion
Right.
for closing. And
That's
I think
right.
you mentioned you all do two big donation drives a year. Is that what you said?
We do. That's right. One in May, which is called KW Cares Month, and that coincides with Mo Anderson's birthday, our chair of the board and founder. And the other one is Multiply Your Business, and it's typically in October. It's in the fall. We do that during hurricane season because that is typically our biggest natural disaster response is to hurricanes. And so we raise money during that time period to help us, get funds in order to help our families that are victims of the hurricane season and other disasters. But in particular, we use that time period to do that.
So those are the two main big donation drives. But obviously, anybody could donate whenever they want. They could donate during
100%.
And even a lot of individual market centers will do their own, like, they'll take initiative
Yes.
and do their own fundraiser or things like that.
That is absolutely true. We are so blessed that people all across KW feel connected to our mission. And you are 100% right. We have market centers that do golf tournaments or that do bowling tournaments or that even like do bake sales, right? And sometimes we get a check for $500. Sometimes we get a check for $25,000 because they did a huge golf tournament. But that is also another way that we receive revenue is through the fundraising efforts on a local level, through the market centers, or sometimes through the regional level as well.
Yeah, I mean, even just a solo agent at KW, they could even
Yeah.
just set up their own. Like anybody could just take action and be like, "Hey, this is
Yes.
nonprofit.
Yes.
I'm doing something."
That's right. We actually have a challenge going on right now. It is a 30-day walk challenge, and we have an agent out of Connecticut. His name is Todd Jennings, and he received a grant from us a few years ago. He was in a terrible car accident where his car hit black ice, and he was hospitalized for weeks. I don't remember exactly how many weeks, but it was a really bad car accident. He applied for a grant with us. We helped him pay for his medical bills, and in return, he came to us and said, I want to do something for KW Cares just as a solo agent. So he's, connected all of his friends to the challenge, the agents at his market center, and he's raising his goal is to raise $5,000 for us in the next 30 days. So every day he walks, I believe it's 3 miles, I can't remember off the top of my head, and then he logs it, and then he says, "Okay, this is what my route was today." He's encouraging other folks that are doing the challenge with them to continue their challenge as well. So, I mean, at one point, I think he didn't even know if he could walk again, so just for him to get out there and do this is pretty incredible.
That is inspiring because KW Cares personally helped him, and now
Right.
he's doing much better and wants to give back.
Exactly. It's a
That's why I
pretty
love
beautiful
KW.
story.
That's what it's all about.
It
What
really is,
looking at
honestly.
families helping families. Is that what you said?
Mhm. That's
Uh,
right, our tagline is "Families helping families." That's right.
and I know you have just hundreds of stories like that and like these. Before I really want to get into stories. I love stories.
We can tell yes, we have some good stories to tell.
But I want to talk a little bit more about KW Cares in comparison to like other nonprofits. So how do
Yes.
you compare it to other nonprofits?
Okay, so that's a really good question. So we are called an employee hardship fund. That's the type of nonprofit that we are. We're not an educational nonprofit. We're not a food bank, right? We are an employee hardship fund. And it's really interesting because we had not really connected over the years with other employee hardship funds from other companies until about 2 years ago. I went to a conference that's held every other year. There's one coming up in 2026. And so I went to the one in 2024. And that was really the first time that we had a feel, KW Cares did, for what the landscape looked like in terms of this part of the nonprofit industry. And it was fascinating because they started the conference, and there must have been about 200 companies that were represented, big companies that everybody knows about: American Airlines, Chick-fil-A, Victoria's Secret. I mean, you name it, they were there, right? Home Depot. And they started the conference by saying, we want to just sort of you know, take a minute and see where everybody's hardship fund sort of lies within this area. Like, so we're going to start calling out numbers. If you work for an employee hardship fund that gives $1,000 per grant, raise your hand. And the majority of them raise their hand. And then they went up to 3,000 and then 5,000. And then there are very few hands that went past 5,000. As a matter of fact, then they get to 10,000 and one person raises their hand is from Home Depot. And they're like, wow, well, congratulations, Home Depot. You give the most amount of money. And I said, hold up. I raised my hand. I'm like, actually, I'm from KW Cares. We're part of Keller Williams, and we give up to $30,000. Mic drop, Lance. The people just stared at me like they couldn't believe it. And I said, and we don't have a lifetime cap. All of those other companies, you're one and done. You get one
Mhm.
grant and that's it. For us at KW Cares, heaven forbid something happens to you in 2025 and then something else happens to you in 2026 or 2027, you can come back and apply for another grant with us. We don't have a lifetime cap. People were blown away, Lance. They just couldn't believe it. And I just felt so proud to represent the Keller Williams family, right? Because it was just such a really special moment to realize we have an employee hardship fund that's doing more for our people than any other company, not just the real estate industry, but any other company across all industries. And that was a pretty impressive moment.
Definitely. That is awesome. And if I had to bet, a lot of the money that comes from KW Cares is from employees, is from agents, where I bet the other companies, it's
That's
not coming from their employees or
That's
associates.
correct. Like a lot of their It's interesting because most of the other companies, the parent company seeds it and gives a percentage of what they earn.
Mhm.
For KW Cares, we have a different model, which I actually think is a stronger model because it goes back to, like I said, it's family helping family, or it's truly agents helping agents. And I feel like it's so much more impactful when you're on the receiving end and you're getting a grant. It's just a different feeling knowing that somebody that you'll never meet from Kansas City gave you a grant and you live in, or gave money so that you could receive a grant. And you live in Austin, Texas. It definitely feels good to know that your company has set up this organization, but I think it's a little bit of a different feel if you know the company itself just giving you a check. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
Mhm.
just a feeling because it means more. When you get a grant from KW Cares, it's more than just the financial assistance because you know it's coming from another agent and their hard-earned commission. It's also a message of love and support. And that's often what we hear from our grantees. It's like, thank you so much for the financial assistance. We need it, but you also we feel the love and it gives us hope to get through this really dark time in our life. And I think it would be different. You wouldn't necessarily feel that emotional aspect of it if the model wasn't set up the way we do it at KW Cares.
Absolutely. So how can, if someone is a KW agent or and they want to give or donate or one time or monthly or whatever, what's the best way where they can learn more about how they can give and donate?
They should definitely go to our website, kwcares.org, and we have a whole section on how you can give, right? You can give one time on our website. We also have information on transactional giving. And I just want to take a minute to put a plug in for that, right? So transactional giving makes up every year about 70% of our budget.
Wow.
And that's really the bread and butter of our revenue each year, right? Each and every year. However, at the end of 2024, only 24% of all closed transactions at Keller Williams gave to KW Cares. So we have a really big opportunity to move the needle. We envision a day where, we have 50% of all closed transactions giving to us, or even one day every single transaction is giving to us. And again, it doesn't have to be a huge amount. It could be $5, $10 with every transaction, but you multiply all that together, and that gives us the ability to serve our family, our KW family, when they need it. So on our website is a ton of information about how to give transactionally. It's through command. You can get in there and do what we call set it and forget it and just set an amount, and it automatically takes it out from every commission that an agent makes. And then we have the two specific fundraisers that we mentioned earlier, where there's an opportunity to give in May and then again in October of every year when we do our two annual fundraisers.
Perfect. Yeah. And then the show notes, I'll put kwcares.org in there so people can just easily access it or click on it. And then also if someone wanted to like start their own little campaign, fundraiser, donation drive, how would someone do that? Like on an individual level or market center level?
They should reach out to us through the website. There's a contact email and just reach out. And we have a development team. There's two people in that department. It's not like we have 20. But we do work with individual agents and market centers to help them plan fundraisers for us. And we also have a software platform that we have bought that we air quotes lend them. So if they need a way to collect money, they can do it through our platform. And we have a lot of internal resources that they can benefit from. So just reach out to us directly and we'll work with them.
Perfect. So that's how people could give back and donate. Now, if someone was experiencing some type of hardship, if they're, and this is available to any Keller Williams agent or associate, correct?
That is absolutely in the United States and Canada.
In the United States and Canada. Okay. And then
Yes.
how would someone go about asking for that?
Sure. So I would also direct them to the website because there's
Okay.
very specific information in terms of how to do so. But I want to just explain really quickly that about our grants. First of all, we have two types of grants. One is a catastrophic hardship grant of up to $30,000. And those grants are intended for situations where someone gets cancer and they have a tremendous amount of medical bills, or heaven forbid, they were in an accident and now they're wheelchair bound and they have to remodel their home and there's a lot of expenses related to that. Those grants again are available up to $30,000. We also have an emergency grant of up to $5,000. And that process is simpler, right? It's an emergency grant, so it's intended to get to an agent within a matter of days. And those are to help with funeral expenses. They're to help after natural disasters. If you need to flee an area because you have I know you're from Los Angeles. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but we had agents out in Los Angeles. The wildfire was coming their way. They had to get to safety. They needed some money to go to a hotel to keep their family safe. Those grants are intended for that. We also have, unfortunately, victims of domestic violence. And this is a new category for us, Lance. And sadly, domestic violence transcends every industry and every income level. And that's our fastest growing category, actually. And we do give grants for domestic violence victims for people that need to flee a very dangerous situation with their spouse or partner and need to get to safety. We give emergency grants for that purpose as well. To be eligible for either of those grants, you have to be a KW agent or associate. For the bigger grant, the catastrophic hardship grant, the requirement is you have to be with KW for 6 months or more. But for the emergency grant, you can get that on day one immediately when you start with KW. Both grants are hardship based, Lance. These are grants, they're tax free gifts, they're not loans. So if we grant you $30,000, that's tax free that you never have to pay back. But the IRS says you have to determine eligibility, right? So the board of KW Cares has decided all of these grants are hardship based, right? They're intended for people in our KW family that need help the most. So our qualifying factor is $60,000. That's our threshold. If you have more than $60,000 in your checking or savings combined, you would not be eligible.
Mhm.
Most people in the KW family don't have $60,000 sitting around in their checking and savings account. So we rarely turn somebody away, Lance. I mean, I think it's happened maybe once or twice over the 5 years that I've been at KW Cares. So those are our two grants and those are our eligibility requirements.
Definitely. Awesome. All right. Well, I think now let's start hopping into some stories.
Oh,
If
can I
you
go back, circle back to something really quick?
Yes, yes, yes.
Um, I just want to go back to the importance of an employee hardship fund within a company, right? So that's what KW Cares is. We're an employee hardship fund on the nonprofit side. And people ask, like, why is that important? It's important because it is a very vital part of the company, any company culture, Lance. And we've done some research around this that I think is really fascinating. You may or may not know this, but the number one factor that a person considers when they're thinking about going to a new company or new job is company culture, even more so than salary or how much they anticipate they're going to earn in a year, right? So
Mhm.
company culture is the driving factor. The same factor exists for retention. So when you look at building your team or building a market center culture, we like to say use KW Cares as an important part of that. We can help you build such a strong company culture where people want to come join your team or want to come join your market center because you have something. I mean, it's not just KW Care. That KW Care is not the only part of a company culture, but it is a part of it, right? And what the research shows is that when you have an employee hardship fund, people feel that that company cares about them and that they're there for them, that knowing they have peace of mind that if something happens to them, there's this employee hardship fund that they could turn to for assistance, brings them peace of mind and it actually increases productivity. There's really, really interesting research around all of this. But I just want to mention and put a plug into, if you're listening to this and you're in a leadership position, whether you run a team or your market center leadership or your regional leadership, look to KW Cares to help you strengthen your company culture. We have all sorts of resources available to leadership to be able to do so. This is part of my job, Lance, working with leadership and bringing KW Cares and really embedding it in market centers and teams. And when we see that happen, you do see productivity increase and people feel and retaining people, right? Just people feeling like they're part of a company that really cares about them and their families. So
I couldn't agree more. I joined Keller Williams because of the culture. I experienced it and I love KW culture. There's nothing like it. It's hard to explain it
it
to
is.
never experienced it, but once you experience it, you're like, wow. So,
Right.
and this totally adds into the KW culture. So I couldn't agree with you more that this hardship fund helps with, I would say it even helps with agent growth,
It
helps
does.
with
It does.
agent production, helps with
Yes.
retention because the
Yeah,
people they feel, more secure and at ease. And, they don't just feel like another agent, they feel like they're
that's
part of it.
right.
So yeah,
That's right.
I
And
love that.
also,
Glad you
I
brought
think
that.
it's also just human nature. People wanna rally around a cause. We see this
Mhm.
a lot being played out at KW Cares when we have a natural disaster, and we can talk about that in a minute. But even if just knowing that someone in your market center, for instance, has cancer or their kid has cancer and they're undergoing this terrible challenge and tragedy, people want to help. It's human nature, right? And it gives a market center a cause to rally around, which again goes to strengthen that culture within the market center or on the team. So let us help you if you're listening to this. If you're interested, please just reach out. We love to work with market center leaderships and team leaders all the time to do just this, right?
Absolutely. And then when the agents rally behind a cause, it just deepens the bonds and the relationships
It
that they have.
does. It
So
really does, for sure, for sure.
awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna tell my market center to reach
To
out to you.
call me.
Yeah.
Call me stat. Call Lexi stat. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else that you want to touch on before we hop into some amazing stories?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about a little bit about our natural disaster program. We've been sort of alluding to that on this podcast so far, and just wanted to talk a little bit about what we do and KW Cares does in terms of responding to natural disasters. Our model is intended to be the bridge. So if a natural disaster happens in a particular area, say, excuse me, like in Louisiana after a hurricane, our model is such that we want to be the bridge between like after the storm hits and before the government or other nonprofits like the Red Cross that do specific disaster relief step in. Oftentimes we get there and we are, I would say almost all of the times, we get there before the federal government does, and we're able to implement assistance days in advance, right? So when a natural disaster hits, we primarily do two things, Lance. And it's important for your listeners to know this because they could themselves one day be the victim of a natural disaster. As you know, you live in the Los Angeles area, and we started 2025 with the terrible Los Angeles wildfires, right? So we do primarily two things in response to natural disaster. One is give the emergency grants of up to $5,000. We talked about that a little earlier. So if a wildfire is getting close to you, you need to evacuate, you can reach out to us and we can get you funds of up to $5,000 within a matter of 24 to 48 hours, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is we send actual supplies. I think a lot of folks have seen our trailers. They have the KW Cares logo on the side, and we send those trailers with all sorts of supplies. If it's a hurricane, then we'll send generators, extension cords, gas cans, things to help provide electricity in the home. With the wildfires, we sent different set of supplies. We sent gas masks, we sent air purifiers. We work with regional and market center leadership to determine the best response, right? Because it's just going to be different from each natural disaster to the next natural disaster. So when a disaster happens, the first thing, well, even before the disaster happens, I'm working with leadership. If we know it's going to happen, like a hurricane, right? You pretty much know where it's going to hit and days in advance. And so we start working, my team and the regional team start working together on what kind of response we want to put together. And then after the disaster happens, then we execute on those plans. When we send the supplies, we send them in the trailer. on the receiving end, it's up to the region to distribute those supplies. So that's another really beautiful part of our model. We're always working hand in hand, right, with the agents on the local level and with us, at KW Cares. So as there's only 7 of us on our team. We couldn't like deploy all of us at one time because we're managing the emergency grant situation. So we
Yep.
depend on the volunteers in the region to deliver those supplies, to hand out those supplies. And I've been part of those efforts, and we can talk about that in a minute. But people really talk about rallying around a cause, right? That's some of the most beautiful things I've seen here in my tenure at KW Cares is when people are responding to the natural disasters and they see the trucks. I've been present, like when you see our trucks come in and they say KW Cares, and you have 100 volunteers in the parking lot waiting for it, and people start cheering and crying. It gets so emotional, and it is, it's a shame anyone has to go through a natural disaster, but I would say the silver lining in that is seeing the way our KW family comes together to help each other. It is really something else. It is pretty spectacular.
Absolutely, definitely. So now I do want to dive into some of those stories. So
Let's do
let's
that.
go off with a story or two that you want to tell about an agent receiving the catastrophic hardship grant. Do you have
Okay,
any good stories for
sure.
the
Yeah, I have several stories. Um, One of the stories recently that is at the top of my mind. We gave a grant recently to an agent out of Nevada. Back in 2018, she was in a terrible car accident with her father. It was the winter time, and they were driving from Nevada to Utah for a work event for her father. And they hit, I think, a patch of black ice. They fell off the highway down a ravine, and a tree broke the fall at some point. But this agent eventually, well, she's paralyzed from the neck down from that
Mm,
accident. Um, she was paralyzed immediately after the accident. Her dad was not. So her dad had to climb out of the window of the car barefoot because he lost his shoes somehow in the accident, and through the snow up to the highway and flagged down help. If not, she wouldn't be here with us today. Long story short, um, after this was in 2018, after several years of insurance claims that she put in, because she has to have help for everything that she does, Lance. I mean, she can't live, she's paralyzed from the neck down, right? So she has a voice assisted, um, like wheelchair and all of that kind of stuff. But at some point, insurance recently stopped paying for her help and all the things that she needs to survive on a day-to-day basis. So she turned to KW Cares with the support of her OP at her market center, and we were able to give her a full grant to support her in this time. And she's just an amazing story of resilience. I've had the opportunity to talk to her personally a couple of times, and I mean, it just blows me away, what courage she has to just get up every single day. She has a teenage daughter. Her daughter was, I believe, like 7 or something like that, when I can't remember the details, around 7 or 8 when she got hurt originally. And her daughter's just been, she said, such a big source of inspiration to her, helping
mm,
her with her daily activities. I mean, she said something interesting. She said, when something like this happens, it doesn't just happen to you. It happens to all the people around you that love you. And she's just so grateful for her family's support as well. So that's a story that will stick with me. It sticks with me every day, right? So like after I met her and I'm having some sort of bad thing that's happened in my mind that's bad, I often reflect on that conversation. I said, like she just gives me a lot of motivation to sort of just, push forward and be grateful for what I have. So that's
that
one story.
that's a beautiful story on how KW came together and helped. I love it.
Yeah. Another story that really sticks with me is this time, it was about this time last year, I believe. We had a young man, the son of an agent. This was in the Midwest, and he was leaving school with a friend. He was the passenger, and the friend got in an accident and their car hit a tree. This was just right after school, right? They were just going home. Normal school day, Lance. You leave the house. This kid, it really it sticks with me, well, because he got paralyzed severe, and Also got burned like 80% of his body.
Mhm.
We were able to step in and give his family a grant so that he could go to a special hospital. It's for adolescents that are burn victims in Chicago. And he was able to receive much needed medical support there after the accident. But that kid is the same age as my son.
Mm.
And I just can't imagine, like, I get a little emotional thinking about this, like, you just think it's, like, every day, like, "Goodbye, mom, I'm going to school. Okay, bye, honey, I love you." And then the next thing you get a call that your son's life is changed this way forever, like, it's just unbelievable, right? And, such a terrible and tragic situation. But again, we just feel honored that we get to help in a little way, right? We get to bring some relief financially. And again, like I said earlier, these grants are wrapped in love and a message of support. And the families feel that, Lance. So those are two stories that really, really stick with me.
Absolutely. And stories like those, I know, like, this is like deep stuff and intense stuff, but it is nice knowing that KW Cares is stepping up and helping out. And also, I bet it kind of gives you every time a story like this happens, it's probably just a reminder to you to like reflect back on life, like, oh wow,
It
like I need
is.
to enjoy every moment. Like you never know, like just
Absolutely.
tomorrow might not come. Disaster and freak accidents happen every day,
It's
So
so true. It's so true. We see the worst that happens to our KW families, but in seeing that, it helps my staff and I and the board live more fully, like to be more present and to be just so grateful,
absolutely.
for
And
just being
probably to
here.
quit sweating the small stuff, like
Yeah, for
minor
sure.
things, and you're like,
Exactly.
this is nothing.
Just let it
Like
roll off your shoulders,
exactly.
For sure, for sure. And I have some stories about natural disasters too that I wanted to share if that's okay.
Share as many as you'd like.
So a couple I have 3 that I wanted to share with you. The first one, excuse me, is out of the Carolinas, and Mark Brenneman is the regional director out there and has been for several years, and he told me this story a couple years back and about how grateful he is for KW Cares and everything we've done in his region. And he said, Lexi, I want to share this story with you because it really illustrates what KW Cares does and why it's so important, right? So he said that this was before I started. So this was several years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. A hurricane hit the Carolinas area. We knew it was gonna hit the Carolinas area, and he had an agent that was 9 months pregnant, and they were making their calls, right, making sure that everyone had plans, and this agent said that she was gonna shelter in place, and Mark said, "Uh, but you're pregnant and you may lose electricity and all that kind of stuff," and she said, "No, I'm fine, my husband and I are fine." He said, "No, you need to apply for a grant with KW Cares, an emergency grant. You need to go to someplace, that's safe because again, you're pregnant, you just never know, right?" So she did. We gave her a grant and she evacuated, I believe, to Atlanta. And when she was evacuated in Atlanta, she went into early labor and had the baby there. The baby was born with its cord wrapped around its neck. So, had she not evacuated, the baby would have died and she could have died giving birth and had she stayed sheltered in place. And, it just illustrates that, like, our grants, they don't just change lives. At times, they save lives. And this kid's now like 8 years old. He's in elementary school, doing great, healthy, normal kid, right? But it just shows you, like, the impact of what one grant can do on a family, right? So, that's one story I wanted to share. And then another story that's a little bit more lighthearted, it has to do with the wildfires in Los Angeles in your area. Last year, we were deploying our trailers with those air purifiers and masks, and I got a call from one of the regional directors out there that was gonna be on the receiving end. Her name's Anusha, and she called me, and she was just overjoyed in tears. She said, "Lexi, I was driving in the market center to get ready to receive the trailer, and lo and behold, I'm on the interstate, like 8 lanes wide or whatever, and the actual KW Cares trailer passes me by I start honking at it and waving, and she said she just broke down in tears just now because it's so stressful when you're responding to this. The number one thing we want to do after a natural disaster at KW Cares in partnership with the regions and the market centers is make sure our people are okay, right? And the wildfires were changing every day. It was so different than a hurricane response. A hurricane, it hits, it moves out. You know exactly where the devastation is, right? With the wildfires, it was like a game of chess or something. It was constantly changing every day, and it created a whole other level of stress because it didn't go away after 2 or
Mhm.
3 days, and then, you could roll up your sleeves and you can, like, muck houses out and all that kind of stuff. It just kept on going, right? So by the time we sent the trailers, everybody, was just under such extraordinary stress, but I thought it was such a neat story because I was on the phone with her, she's crying, and at first something I thought had happened to her, but there were tears of joy, right? That she was just so happy and feeling so loved on that KW Cares and the Keller Williams family was able to make this happen for her region, that she knew that help was coming, right? So I just thought that was a neat story. And then the last natural disaster story I wanted to share came out of the hurricane last year, Hurricane Helene. So
Mhm.
I went out there personally and I met a bunch of people, and I was part of the efforts to give out those generators. And one, it was just remarkable again to see how people came together. People that have lost so much coming to the market center to help unload the generators, to help distribute water. And then you turn around and you talk to them, we're like, well, you're here because your home's okay, right? And like, well, we got really flooded, but we know we wanted to pitch in and help anyway. It brings out the best in our people, and it's just really mind-blowing, in my opinion, to stand side by side volunteering with someone who's lost part of their home, and they're still there to help, right? But one lady in particular, told me that her home had flooded, had been taken away by the flood. This is after Hurricane Helene in North Carolina, and she had to walk down the mountain with her kids, like, just and sliding in the mud and all that stuff to get to help, right? And they got to the highway and nobody would stop for her. And they were covered in mud and stuff. And she just tried to, was trying to flag down cars to help get them into town where because they needed help. And no one would stop for her. And she said, Lexie, I just turned to my kids and said, and we're standing on the side of the highway and we held hands and she said, let's pray. And let's pray that someone comes to help us. And the very next car stopped and helped, picked her up and took her to the market center. I was like, unbelievable. It just gave me chills. It's pretty incredible. And then I guess I do want to mention too, one thing that's related to all of this, right? In terms of our culture and how incredibly giving our folks are and how they volunteer their time to help, with our KW Cares mission. In response to that, Lance, we give out at family reunion every year a Kathy Nye Philanthropic Award. So Kathy Nye sat in my role, in my shoes, for about 15 years. She was executive director of KW Cares before I got hired. When I came on board, she then remained on the board, but went back. She's a killer real estate agent. She subsequently has passed away. And in her honor, we give out what's called the Kathy Nye Philanthropic Award at family reunion. Last year, we gave it out to a young lady that's by the name of Amethyst Albert, and she's out of North Carolina. And she and her husband and son, after the hurricane hit, basically gathered a small army of volunteers and they went to the affected area. And they, in particular, went to go help a small community that had been flooded out. There was only one way in and out of this community up the mountain over one bridge, and that bridge got swept away. And several of the people that lived in that community needed medical attention, but there was no way for them to cross the river. So her husband is former military. So they got a bunch of former military folks from their community, a different part of North Carolina, came to the affected area, rebuilt that bridge within 24 hours.
Wow.
So those folks could cross the river and get the medical attention they needed. This lady, Amethyst Albert, received the Kathy Nye Philanthropic Award at Family Reunion this year in 2025. And I just think she was a hero. Her and her husband are a hero for what they did. We are getting ready to open up that application. That's part of why I'm mentioning it on this podcast. And that application, that submission, you can nominate anybody in KW can nominate anybody in KW for the Philanthropic Award, and we're gonna open that up January 1. So if you're listening to this podcast and you think of someone that exemplifies this kind of volunteerism, right? This giving back to the KW Cares and our mission and what we do, we wanna hear those stories. This is my absolute favorite thing I do every year, Lance, is I last year we received like 400 submissions, and just reading through every one of them, it's so emotional. It's so beautiful to see what our people are doing all across the United States and Canada. I guess it's my favorite thing I do is going through those applications, vetting them so that our board can decide on the final winner. So that's coming up January 1. Yeah, again, if you're listening to this and you know of someone, please look out for that application process and don't be shy. Nominate someone you think is deserving of that award.
And you present that at family reunion?
Yeah, so last year, that's how we kicked off Family Reunion. Gary Keller invited me to kick off the entire thing with him, and this was the very first thing that was done at Family Reunion, and Amethyst had no idea she won the award. She was there, at Family Reunion. We knew she was gonna be there, but she didn't know she was gonna get the award, so she got to come on stage with Gary and I and receive the award.
That is beautiful. I didn't know about that award, so I
Yeah,
love
it's
it.
super cool. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I'm
So, yeah,
probably gonna nominate a few people. I know some
well,
really.
please do. Pl
So yeah,
please
I
do.
know we could go on forever with stories because you all have given back. You said $67 million so
That's right.
far. You have helped 7,200 families. So that's 7,200 stories. We don't have
That's
enough time
right.
for that. But thank you so much for sharing all those stories. And I'm just a big believer in KW Cares. KW as a whole, but KW Cares like
Yeah,
brings so much culture to Keller Williams and
that's
to
right.
the offices and everything like that. So
That's right.
I appreciate it. I love it.
Well,
Um,
thank you, Lance.
I think
Thanks for
that's
letting
all.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all I have. Is there anything else you want to add or that
No,
I
I
forgot?
just wanna say thank you for giving me a platform to bring awareness to our KW Cares mission, and I really appreciate that. These kinds of opportunities really, are what it's about, right, in terms of inspiring people and encouraging people to also support our mission. So if you're listening, I encourage you to give through transactional giving if you don't already, or go to our website and make a one-time donation. We'd really appreciate that, and just happy holidays to all.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much. And now I like to end every podcast episode on a light note with
Yes.
some funnies. So we each will tell each other a joke. I call it the joke off.
Okie
So
dokie, let's do it, Lance.
who do you want me to go first or do you want to go first? You can
Let me
pick.
go first because I never remember the punchline of jokes. I have a little problem I inherited from my dad. He's the same way. So I have a very simple joke, and it's a knock knock joke. So
Okay.
I would say, y- you say knock knock, I think.
You want me to
No,
say
I
knock
say knock
or
knock.
you want to say
Oh,
knock?
I
And
say knock knock. Knock
yeah,
knock.
who's there?
Lettuce.
Lettuce who?
Let us in. It's cold out there.
That is
I
a
thought
funny.
I thought that was apropos for the season because it's cold in a lot of parts of our country, including Austin right now. It's like 60 degrees, which for us is very cold.
Yeah. That was a cute one. I like that. That was very clever. All
Your
right,
turn.
so here's mine. What's a realtor's favorite drink?
Hmm. Gosh, I have no idea. What is it?
Prosecco and escrow.
That's funny. Yes. I don't think I get it though. Prosecco, yes, and escrow, I get it, but how do they go together?
Well, they don't. It just they rhyme, I guess. Like prosecco with
Okay. I'm like,
oh,
maybe I missed something, Lance. I don't know. But
usually
okay.
when agents celebrate, they celebrate with the drink. Like when they're in escrow, they're like, "Oh, celebration
Oh,
time."
yes. Yeah, I get that. I understand that, but it's I guess because it rhymes, right?
I guess it's their favorite
Okay.
drink.
Hey, well,
Prosecco and
good
escrow.
enough. Hey, next time I see you, we'll do prosecco, and hopefully you will be an escrow. How about that?
Yeah. Well,
All right, Lance.
awesome. It was an absolute blast. Thank you so much, Lexi. And thank you so much for all the work you're doing and everyone at KW Cares. Such a
Aw,
beautiful mission and nonprofit. So
Yeah. Thank you.
Love
We
this.
appreciate the support. All
All
right.
right.
Take care.
Okay.